All right, I should be finishing up with this video. What we're going to go over in this video is formal tabling. So we're just going to add a sheet and go ahead and call it table. And the idea here is that there's a lot of times in a report where you need to have your data tabled. So there's two ways to report information. One of them is through a plot, graph, and the other one is via a table. And something like this worksheet, this is not a table. This is what we call a working table or working data. There's no table number, there's no legend, there's a lot of missing material from here. And it basically looks pretty unprofessional, to be honest with you, if it was going to be in a formal report. So what we want to do is go ahead and create a formal table here. So I'm going to start with the month that we're interested in. Then we want to know what the market return is. From this, we're going to calculate the forecast stock return. Go ahead and wrap text on this one. And then we're going to compare that to the actual stock return. And we're going to look at what the error is. So that's the difference between the actual and the forecast return. And then we're going to ask, is it in the 70% interval? So this is just going to be an if statement that's going to be a yes or no kind of answer question. Go ahead and drop a line on it. So this is going to be table 1. So when you do formal tables, if you write about them, so if this is in a report and I'm writing about it, you don't talk about the table above or the table below. You talk about table 1. That way there's no ambiguity to it. Everybody knows what table 1 is because you can only see table 1. And then of course your table should be in order. So table 1 comes first, then 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll merge text, wrap, go left, and go top here, and work on our legend. So this is basically something that's going to tell the reader what the table is going to be. So I'm just going to go ahead and give you an example of the kind of stuff you would put in the legend. This table compares the forecast stock return to the actual stock return to evaluate the performance of the market model. Model is estimated using monthly return data from January 2013 through December 2017. Evaluation year is 2018. The firm is Abbott Labs, ABT. The model intercept is minus 0.006, and beta is 1.550. Okay, so I want to point out a couple of things here real quick. You'll notice I'm using actual dates. The dates are mean they're exact. It's not arbitrary. So if I use something like using the last 5 years of data, so every time we go forward a year, the last 5 years change. So it's important and much more accurate if you put the actual dates in, and it doesn't take any more effort. So I mean, this is some of the standards that people use in industry, right? We use dates. We don't say the last 5 years. We don't say last week. And that way there's no arbitrariness to it, right? It can't be confused. When your reader is reading this report, they know it's January 2013 through December of 2017. There's no ambiguity to it whatsoever. So we need our months. We'll go ahead and drag that down until we hit 12. And then the last thing is going to be full year. If I can spell year correctly. And while I'm here, I'm just going to go ahead and do a spell check. Make sure that I haven't, incorrectly typed something. I'm going to ignore all. So that's one of the fun things about having the spell check nice and tight too. Alright, and then we're going to go ahead and build our table up. So the market return is equal to, and that's going to be SPI-D, first month. We'll go ahead and change that to a %. Add a couple of decimal places, and then we'll extend it down. And then our forecast model is going to be equal to, and we want to go to LinEst, and we want this intercept, F4 to lock it in, plus the slope, F4 to lock it in, multiplied by the market return. We'll go ahead and set that as a %, and add a couple of decimal places. The actual return is going to be equal to, we'll come on to our stock day, pick our first number, change that to a %. See what I mean? That there's just too many decimal places here. That just makes it confusing. So 3 decimal places is typically enough, and a lot of times 2 is probably better. And our error is going to be equal to the actual minus the forecast. And finally, we're going to look at our interval question. So we're going to use an if statement, and then it's if and. So if the actual number is less than the forecast plus 1 standard deviation, 1.04 standard deviations, and greater than the forecast return minus 1.04 standard deviations, then it's then the model is actually working the way it's supposed to work. So there's other ways to do this, but I want to introduce you to an if and statement. So that's the main reason we're doing it this way. Equals if and. So the and, you can put multiple logical tests, and they all have to be true for the if statement to be true. So if our actual is in fact less than our forecast plus 1.04 standard deviations times, and now we need to go to our LinEst and pick our SCE, hit F4 to lock it in, hit F5, sorry about that, hit F4 to lock it in. So then we're going to do a comma, so it's going to be less than the forecast plus 1 standard deviation, and the actual return has to be greater than the actual, or the forecast return minus 1.04 times, and now we need our LinEst to get our standard deviation again, and F4 to lock that in. Not paying attention. Hit F4 to lock that in the parenthesis. So if this is true, if both these things are true, then yes, we are inside. And if it's not, then double quote, no. So in this case, it's a yes. Now we can go ahead and just drag everybody down. Now we have to edit this last one because the standard deviation that is on the LINS sheet, this standard deviation, is a monthly standard deviation, and we need to multiply that by the square root of 12 to get an annual standard deviation. So all we need to do here is on our and function, we're going to say SQRT, which is square root of 12 times, and do the same thing here. SQRT of 12. Alright, let's go ahead and put a little line down here at the end. Okay, so now we have our working table. You can see it performed, our model actually did fairly decently. So for a lot of the months, everything was good, our forecast was accurate. For some of the months, our forecast actually isn't that great. But that's the nature of forecasting. When you try and forecast the future, more than likely you're going to be wrong. It's just a question, is your model good enough to get a better idea of what's going on? The objective of forecasting is to create the most accurate forecast as you possibly can. So I'll just tune things up a little bit more. Let's go ahead and get that centered. We'll center all these guys up. I want my month. Go ahead and center those, and my year, or my yes, no answer, go ahead and center those. So again, I'm just trying to make the table look a little bit more professional. Those choices are up to you as the writer. So the last thing we'll do is go ahead and highlight this table. I'll do a Control-C to copy, and then we will come over to your results section, and again I'm going to correct this so it'll be a little bit different. And what we want to do is go paste special, and HTML format. So now I have a nice functional table that's looks nice and professional, and if my Excel spreadsheet updates, then everything updates. And then I just copy the table back in. So if you're doing reports, written reports here at the university or in business, this is a good way to create a formal table. Alright, the only other thing I'm going to mention, because the video is getting a little on the long side, if you one of the questions is going to be, you want to know about what happened to your stock, any special things, list 4 major market impacts for the evaluation year, and does your firm have exposure to these events, and we want to know if there's any significant events associated with your company. So again, my company is Abbott, so all I did was Google Abbott Labs major events 2018, and the big thing that happened to Abbott is that they had exceptional sales growth, and they also had very strong earnings growth, much stronger than the rest of the market, so everything went pretty well. And you'll be able to find multiple events or multiple references to big things that happen in your analysis year from a market standpoint. Alright, so we'll go ahead and save this file. And I will note that the table isn't part of the grade code. None of this stuff is highlighted. So I'm not great with the program is not designed, the grade program is not designed to grade this. But of course it is part of your report or your thought questions. Alright, well, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the projects and learned a fair amount about Excel. The project's going to have a lot more detail on them than the Excel practice problems from the textbook. And again, what we're trying to do is give you analytical skills to try and evaluate what's going on. So, alright, thank you very much. Bye.